Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Bears Den presented by War Media. I am Saul Rodriguez, joined by my co-host Joe Tanksley. How we doing, Joe?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Not bad, man. I think getting closer to the NFL season, start to feel it. It's starting to get what I think for me with any type of sports, man, it starts to feel a little chilly in Chicago. It's late in the baseball season, football season kicking off, all the other sports kicking off like basketball too soon. So this is honestly best time for me, my personal favorite time of the year because you know the weather's not too chilly outside, it's not too hot, and then you have all these sports going on. So man, I'm hyped,
So
honestly.
this is
Yeah.
what we call hoodie season. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
You know,
man.
you can throw on a hoodie and a fresh pair of Jordans, you know what I'm saying, and go out there and get it. You know what I'm saying? It actually, fall, I'm like you, fall is my favorite time of the
Yeah.
year. Um, and it must be because I love football and I'm a football fan, I'm a Bears
Hmm.
fan. This is definitely my favorite time of the year. You get to get all your fits off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, wear the sneakers. You know what I'm saying? The gym shoes you want to wear. You know what I'm saying? And it is what it is. I like the fall. The summer. Yeah. Really, the only thing you can wear is just a short and t-shirt. You can't
Yep.
do anything too much else. But in the fall, you can rock your hoodie. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You're from the East Coast, you can put on your bubble vest and your
Yep.
Timbs. You can really do it up. So I'm ready for the fall, and definitely ready for this bear season.
Yeah, man. You no, no, you make a great point. I mean, I think I tell everybody all the time that there's no like the fits are just better in the fall and winter. Like you could just do more. It's like kind of boring in the summer that you're just kind of like, oh,
Right.
shorts, t-shirt, like it's not you can't do much. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Definitely the best time for fits is in the fall. But I will say besides the weather getting better, the roster has gotten smaller, right? They've gotten to 53. The Bears roster is officially at 53. We will talk about that as well as some of the players that were cut. We will talk trades that happened, Bears related and rest of the league, including, specifically the Dallas Cowboys. We'll talk a little bit about that. But just a reminder, next week we will have our season preview episode. We'll have some of the guys on, obviously Joe Tanksley. We're gonna get some of our other War Media colleagues on that episode. Definitely check that out. It should be coming out Thursday, Friday, something like that. So we'll have a big Bears preview episode for sure. So to start things off this week, though, what were your thoughts, Joe, on the final preseason game? The Bears fell to the Bills 24-21, end the exhibition campaign 1-2. Fields went 2 for 6. Plenty of criticism was coming his way, honestly, after his performance. But it's one of those things, man, where I think people forget the type of play calling that happens in exhibition play and how it's easy to overreact to all these things. People forget that every year. But we saw another DJ Moore touchdown, which was a positive. What did you think about this game and just, people's, overreaction? I mean, what were your thoughts on the Fields play and just the some of the guys that played that on Saturday?
Honestly, I think, as a fan, I would have liked to seen a better performance from Justin Fields. But at the same time, it is preseason,
Hmm.
and we must remember, success in the preseason does not translate to, success in the regular season,
Yep.
and vice versa. I do think, that I do feel, I wish that Fields had a little bit more reps in the preseason, but I kind of understand why the Bears were cautious. And people got to remember that when they do play these preseason games, they don't game plan for opponent. They're not, making strategies and trying to pinpoint a weakness and do things like that. You're just going out there and calling a set of plays, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And you also got to remember, you know, the offensive line, that third preseason game was pedestrian. It was
Hmm.
ravaged by injury, and um, hopefully, it's going to be a lot better. You know what I'm saying? By week one when they play Green Bay. Right now, it seems like Tevin Jenkins is the only one that's going to be out for that game with the injury designation. But specifically for that preseason game, I think we should just all remain calm and relax. I know, the pack, going against the Packers brings all this angst out, and Bears fans, you know, and we get nervous about it, what I'm saying? Because one, we don't want Jordan Love to be good, you know what I'm saying? And it's possibility that he might be good, you know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? And he's been playing in the preseason, and our guy Justin Fields, has not. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So, I mean, I get it from a fan standpoint, but like I said, success in preseason does not translate to success in the regular season, and vice versa. So I think you know it all comes down to now. You know what I'm saying? We got pretty much 2 weeks to prepare for Green Bay, and when they come into the lakefront, the Bears better be ready, what I'm saying, to show and prove. I think this is what everybody's been waiting for. It's like a huge boiling point,
Hmm.
for them. So I think we got through training camp, what I'm saying, and we look at the 53-man roster, and the only person on the injury list is Tevin Jenkins. And so I see Notepads Nate has been practicing. They finally took the Bentley truck
Yeah.
off the lot. And they're gonna they're gonna give him some go, so and they were able to add some depth, with the trade. They traded a 6th round pick for was it Dan Feeney from
Yeah.
Cross Sandburg High School. So I mean, it looks like the Bears are getting themselves in position and ready to to be ready to compete, and try to win a football game week 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as you said, I like, it doesn't necessarily success here doesn't, mean success in the regular season. I don't necessarily think, just when I kind of put that in perspective for people, like I tell them, I'm like, just because, say, like, for example, Kyle Allen, threw for 162 yards and a touchdown, and he beat the Bears, almost,
But here's
obviously,
the thing, like
it's
the,
like,
the
I don't think
main
that matters.
goal, yeah, the main goal for training camp is to make sure all your guys is healthy by week 1.
Exactly.
That's the main goal. You want to make sure your dogs that's really gonna be in the
Yep.
dog fight are gonna be ready to go. You
Yep.
know what I'm saying? And if you got most of your dogs ready to go and be ready for week 1, you're in a good position to
Yep.
have a successful, in the NFL is week to week. You know what I'm saying? So they're in
Yep.
a pretty good position to be successful in week 1.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, yeah, it says it best, I think, with, the cuts and the decisions they made. But like I mentioned, the Bears cut down the roster to 53. How do you feel about it? I mean, were there surprises? Besides the main ones, obviously we'll get to on its own. We'll talk about Tyson Bagent making the roster. But outside of that, outside of the main guys, was there anyone in particular that kind of, stood out to you that either made the roster or didn't?
You know what? Terrell Lewis. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
Terrell Lewis flashed a lot during the preseason, and then they have him, be let go, and they bring in a free agent from Indianapolis Colts. The guy's name escapes me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Something that's hard to pronounce, but they let him go, and they bring in the outsider. Uh, I really like basketball a lot too. Hopefully, he can stick around on the practice squad. And me personally, 6 degrees of separation.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who has a nephew who played, college football with Travis Bell. So I was kind of rooting for him too. But so hopefully he can stick around on the practice squad, and kind of work his way up a little bit. But it's not too many surprises. Like I said, I thought basketball played pretty well, and but that linebacker core is pretty deep. With who they brought in. Late in the preseason, they brought in the linebacker from the Atlanta Falcons. Is it Michael Walker? Is
Yeah. Yeah.
that his name? Yeah,
Yeah.
they brought him late in the preseason, a guy who started a lot of football as well. So that linebacker room is really really deep. I think offensive line wise, the depth is kind of challenged, with the injury of Tevin Jenkins and the
Hmm.
injury of Cody White. He's, even though he's been playing guard for the last few years, he was supposed to be the starting center. And I'm not quite sure, how confident, this coaching staff is and Lucas Patrick. I know they brought him in. I think this was a Getsy guy. They brought him in because he would know all the calls to make
Hmm.
in the offense and be ready to play. But so far he hasn't been very good. Uh, Doug Kramer, another backup center, got hurt in that third preseason game, and it doesn't look like he's going to be available. So that the offensive line depth is a little challenged. But like I said, they made a trade to the Miami Dolphins for a guy that can do both, guard and center. So that kind of helps with that. I see that right now they keep it 7 wide receivers.
Hmm.
Uh, and they brought in a punt returner, a veteran punt returner, which is something that they really needed. So it'd be interesting to see how that wide receiver plays out from week to week. I'm pretty sure there's going to be quite a few inactives in that position group as far as if they can play special teams or not, and be both a wide receiver and a punt return. So we'll see. Who's going to be inactive from week to week in that wide receiver group, and let's see another group that that I'm thinking about is let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah,
Hmm.
that the offensive line group and specifically that wide receiver group because 7 wide receivers is a lot to keep. That's a lot to
Yeah.
keep.
Yeah, and then the one guy I think you were thinking about was Yannick Ngakoue. I know it's a tough one. That's
No, it
the
wasn't
from the
him. They
Colts.
brought in
Oh,
another guy. They brought in another guy that they claimed off waivers from Indianapolis Colts, and
oh, no, different guy.
it
Let's see
was
if
a
I can
different
find
guy.
it.
It's a guy that they scouted doing that practice with the Colts. Uh, yeah.
I
What is
think
that guy's name? I'm sorry.
Is it Kareem?
Yes, it is Kareem. This it
Yeah,
is.
it's
That's what it is.
yeah. I can't see that. Oh yeah, Khalid Kareem. There you go.
Khalid Kareem.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
it is.
defensive. Yeah, huh. That was a couple days ago. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, you made some great points especially when it comes to the wide receivers and all that, and some of the guys that they made, and we'll get into that, especially with the trade because I wanted to ask you about the Feeney trade for sure. But the one thing I did want to ask you because it's been just one of the more wild talking points of the preseason, right? And we talked about it last week, the backup quarterback battle, right? Just because
Mhm.
people were talking about PJ Walker this, PJ Walker that, and it's funny because PJ Walker after the game on Saturday, as our own Muzz Quadri was there getting some great video, he caught the fact that PJ Walker was talking about how he can read the room. He knows basically before
He
he knew.
sucked.
Yeah, yeah, like it's funny because when you could tell he was kind of pissed off, like he didn't really like the questions, but at the end of the day, he knows. He basically kind of said, "I know the situation. Probably he's like, gonna be gone." Basically, kind of like the way he was talking about it, he kind of knew it.
Yeah,
So,
and here's the thing. Hats off to PJ Walker,
yeah,
saying for standing there and answering those
yeah,
questions. He's been around the block a few times and he didn't play well. He didn't
hmm,
produce. And you got a hungry kid, Division two, undrafted free agent, and Tyson Bagent, who came and
hmm,
outplayed him.
yeah,
That's pretty much what happened. I do think that you know Justin, and that along with Tyson Bagent, that quarterback room would benefit from having a veteran quarterback, in that position group. I'm not sure if it's going to be Nathan Peterman or not. I think it probably will be, and I'm just kind of, over Nathan Peterman. He doesn't really do much for me, but having Tyson Bagent has some tools. You know what I'm
hmm,
saying? He has some tools, and I think having them in the fold to develop and grow, is something that they can fall back on, in the future if they need to. I don't think they will, but if they need to, they can. He's what they call, yeah, a prototypical developmental quarterback, someone who come in and learn your system, and learn the language of your system, and if any instance, when he's put into the situation, he'll be ready to go. I don't think it's going to be this year though, so I do think they need a veteran in there.
Yeah, and it was funny. What's funny is you mentioned about Nathan Peterman and he's back. He was released when they cut the when you think you ran away from Nate Peterman, he comes right back. And they released him on Tuesday when they cut down the roster to 53. But apparently he's back and he's probably gonna be the third the probably gonna be the emergency quarterback, because obviously they're having that new rule or whatever. So yeah, man, surprising. Honestly, I mean, I know PJ Walker necessarily didn't do himself any favors, but I would have rather had him as a third emergency quarterback. But it's one of those things where sometimes they do that because maybe they think PJ Walker's better off having a backup job somewhere else, which he might find one. Who knows, like, where things are at right now with certain teams. So maybe it's one of those things they do that. They release a guy because they know that he can find an opportunity somewhere else. So we'll see,
Right.
what happens there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the guy like Bajan is a guy who I love his attitude. He's a guy who, even he was talking about how he watched, he was showing his buddies how the cuts work, with Hard Knocks. He was showing them Hard Knocks videos and all that the other day. And I like his attitude, and I think, yeah, these guys are gonna benefit from each other. And I think that if I feel like with quarterbacks, you say it's a week to week thing. There's always gonna be injuries, and a guy like Bajan will always be ready. I feel like he has that kind of like aura of himself. So we'll see what happens, but it's gonna be interesting. From
And here's the thing. And here's the thing. With Tyson Bagent, he
Yeah,
came out. He was playing with house money, and
yeah,
he left it on the field. You know
yep,
what I'm saying? And because of that, he got the opportunity, to be on the roster. You know what I'm saying? I still think he has a long way to go. He's coming
hmm
from division. He's coming from
yep,
the division, and is he ready for the NFL? You know, I don't know yet. You know what I'm
hmm
saying? To go in there and play against the first team defense, that's a little bit different than when he went against in preseason.
hmm
But he's gonna be on the game plans and kind of understand, what they're trying to do from week to week. And it's a great opportunity for him. It's a great
hmm
opportunity.
Yeah, of course. And you know, uh now to the trade part of the week, like, the Bears made that trade for Feeney. As you mentioned as well, with Tevin Jenkins being injured, is gonna miss the first 4 games of the regular season. It was reported on Wednesday that Jenkins has been placed on the injured reserve. As a result, the Bears made a move to acquire offensive lineman Dan Feeney from the Miami Dolphins. This is a guy who has been in the league since 2017, has played for the Chargers, Jets. He's an Orland Park native, as you said. Carl Sandburg, he saw a post the other day that the Bears are kind of building a Chicago army because they now have 6 guys from the Chicagoland area. From Komet to all these other guys. So yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, Feeney started 4 of the 17 games he played in last year in with the Jets. Well, ultimately, what did you think about this move? And you mentioned a little bit about it, with the depth and all that. But when you saw this move, I think one of the things I liked about this move, I should say, is just the fact that the Bears took the initiative, kind of like the whole thing with Bajan. I think it's out of the ordinary from Bears teams that we see, where it's you kind of take a little bit of a risk with guys. But this I like this because they needed to do something like this, trade for some depth, because their offensive line, obviously without Jenkins, is going to be a little hurt. So yeah, what did you think about this move and what this says kind of the direction of the Bears?
I think that Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham saw a need where they were deficient, with offensive line depth, and I think they had big goals for Tevin Jenkins this year. Uh, and early on in the preseason and training camp, it looked like Tevin Jenkins was ready to take that next step.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't been able to keep himself healthy, and quite frankly, the Bears can't rely on him, to be available because he hasn't been available. When he was drafted, he wasn't available.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I think, they did what they needed to do, and it only cost a 6 round pick. It was a good insurance move. Um, hopefully, when you, add, Feeney. and with Nate Davis, you know, with those guard positions, I think you got Cody Whitehair playing guard right now. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that, Cody Whitehair could be still playing center week
Hmm.
one. Because we don't know how hurt the hand is actually. They didn't really have to tell anybody,
Mm.
but it's still quite possible that Cody Whitehair could be playing center week one against the Packers, and you'll have, Dan Feeney, Cody Whitehair, and Nate Davis. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Interior, with Braxton Jones and Darnell White, which I would feel really comfortable with, instead of having Lucas Patrick in there, you know. But
Hmm.
um I think the Bears saw a need, and they tried to address it. And I think they did so, saying pretty well. I think they did a good job in identifying the guy and then going and getting him. Um, you know, so it's a lot to be seen. With that offensive line still, they still haven't, had that time to kind of mesh together and play together. Uh, the guys that they intended to play. So, uh, but so much of Justin Fields' success is tied into the performance of the offensive line.
Hmm.
And so, the Bears really need, that offensive line to be solid. You know what I'm saying? Justin needs the offensive line to be solid, you know, or, all those people who want to see, the air yards, what I'm saying, the
Hmm.
intermediate passing game, you know, that's predicated on solid offensive line play, and
Hmm.
if they don't get it, what I'm saying, if he doesn't get it, you know, it's not gonna happen.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, people, want to criticize Fields with, this and that with his throwing and all that. But it's like, I want to see what you're doing out there with these 300-pound guys coming after you, constantly every single down. So, yeah. And I think, yeah, you put it, best when you said, yeah, it's going to fringe in a lot on the offensive line. It does. I feel like if the Bears have a good offensive line, their offense is going to play good. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's really says a lot from these teams. And I think, the way it's looking, it's not doesn't look great. But we hope that Tevin Jenkins is able to come back healthy, and him and Darnell Wright are able to put things right in the offensive line, and we'll see. But it's a lot of questions when the offensive line, but hopefully, throughout the season things are solved and they're able to put a solid offensive line in front of the field. So, the final thing I want to ask you about the Bears portion of the pod is, it was reported this week that the Bears are not going to go for Jonathan Taylor after all. Adam Schefter reported that. We talked about it last week. I'm not too down about it. It wasn't necessary, as I said before. But what are your thoughts finally on the fact that it's not going to happen? It's probably a good thing. I mean, the situation and the quality of the player, he might be a little too expensive, but what are your overall thoughts of the situation? Kind of is like we talked about it last week. It kind of started, with us talking about it, but it has officially ended now. What do you think about it?
Here's the thing. I think that with the Bears in the position that they are in right now, I think, this is a team that's, up and coming, but they're not really ready to contend. Like, I
Hmm.
do think they could be formidable in the NFC North, but they still have a long way to
Yep.
go.
Hmm.
And they still have so many more important needs to address on that team to you know waste draft assets or draft capital on drafting a guy like Justin Taylor. You know, if you would have said a three technique was available, then yeah, I think it would be a no brainer. You know what I'm saying? So the Bears are not in that window right now. I would have, I wouldn't have been mad
Hmm.
at the Justin Taylor trade. You know what I'm saying? I would have been happy and excited. Let me get that out there. You know what I'm saying? I would have been, I would have liked that as a fan. But we're talking about the window that the Bears are in right now and what they're trying to build. And Justin Taylor didn't quite fit in that time frame right now. Add that to the fact that, the running back market has been devalued so much,
Hmm.
saying when you can find a capable guy, in the seventh round, the 6th round that can come out there and be a star. You know what I'm saying? And so it's kind of crazy. You know what I'm saying? Because when I grew up, I grew up with Walter Payton. You know what I'm saying? And then after that, there was Barry Sanders. You know what I'm saying? And then there was Emmitt Smith. Then I saw the LaDainian Tomlinson and Marshall Faulk and all those guys. Those were dynamic players. They were important to their teams. They
Mm-hmm.
got paid. Not so much Walter, but not so much Walter. But Barry Sanders was one of the highest paid players in the league, saying when he retired. So to see what the running back position has gone, saying from this heyday, to what it is now, I'm saying? And I think it's because, pretty much what it boils down to is the value of the quarterback position is so high now. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Teams used to really, lean on that running game back in the day. Now, what I'm saying? The game is predicated on, high flying offenses and putting up a lot of points. And so the running back doesn't really fit into that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you know, that's kind of where we're at right now, with the running back position. I think there are some guys out there that deserve to get paid, you know what I'm saying, and that are worth it. But it's crazy because it's kind of like plug and play where you can find guys in the 7th round, 6th round to come in and be capable. It's hard to pay a guy, 14, $15 million a year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where I think analytics has played a part in that. Ryan talking about how the running back is less relevant in a sense. But I think also it's one thing. It's one thing to say oh yeah, you're not going to want to pay a guy 15 a year, whatever, 15 mil a year. But it's also just another story to say they're irrelevant, right? Because that's kind of what the Colts running back, or sorry, the Colts ownership was kind of like alluding to when talking about the running backs, talking to a guy like Taylor. Like it was just straight up just
But
disrespectful. I
he's the
feel
guy who
like.
traded Marshall Falk away.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? They
Right?
also had they also had Edgerrin James too. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? They let him go. So
Hmm.
so like they don't really got a good track record with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so it's just one of those things where I just wouldn't call a guy irrelevant or just call even just allude to that in general, like especially running backs, because it's also one of those things where you sure offensive lines have a big part of that. They make the holes, but it's also another thing for a player to find that hole and then explode through it. I think it's a talent. It's something that you can't find all the time, but I definitely understand where where some of the guys come from and say like that you don't have to pay them a certain amount every year. They're not worth as much as they used to. I get that to a certain extent for sure. I
Mhm.
do want to move on. One last thing I want to ask you has to do with the rest of the NFL, the rest of the league. The Dallas Cowboys made a deal and they traded. They made a trade to acquire quarterback Trey Lance. Do you think he has a future as a starter? Will it be in Dallas? I mean, this is a guy that I feel like people have been a little too harsh on Trey Lance. I know he hasn't necessarily when he has had his time on the field, he hasn't necessarily dazzled to a certain extent to how people imagined it. But I still think he deserves a chance. Whether it's with Dallas, I don't know because Dak, it's still Dak's team for now. So we'll see what happens. But what did you think about the decision to get him and his future in general?
Here's the thing. It's not Trey Lance's fault that the 49ers gave
Hmm.
away 3 first-round picks to go ahead and draft him. It's unfortunate that, he had that injury, last season and, wasn't able to play and he got supplanted by Brock Purdy, who's, pretty much just a system guy. I do think that Trey Lance does have some tools, and I think that um, he's a guy that warrants a look. You know what I'm saying? He
Hmm.
warrants. He
Yep.
has he has some upside. And he has some talent. And I think for a guy like the Black Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott, what I'm saying. That I mean, that should serve as a notice. Like
Hmm.
it's time to you know to show up and put up.
Yep.
They put some weapons around Dak. Dak got some weapons.
Hmm.
And he's always had a solid offensive line. And that defense is ready to win now down there in Dallas. That's a
Yep.
solid defense down there that's ready
Oh
to
yeah.
win now. it's time for Dak, Dak to show and prove. And this is the year to do it, honestly, for Dak. This is the year to do it for him. And I think, Jerry Jones, for him being, Jerry Jones, this was a very calculated move for him.
Hmm.
You know, this was a very calculated move for him. You bring in a guy that was the number 3 pick, I'm saying, a couple years ago, I'm saying, to be a backup. So, if I'm Dak, that serves as a little bit more motivation to get out
Hmm.
there and put up. I'm saying? He got to show and prove in Dallas. I think the Dallas fan base, I'm saying, is, you know, going to be insufferable all year. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because they do have a good football team.
Hmm.
They do have a good football team, but I think a lot of it boils down to the success of Dak Prescott, and I think
Hmm.
Jerry Jones recognizes that, and he made a move. He didn't let Dak know. He didn't let the cat coach know. He did what he wanted to do with his team.
Yep. And yeah, you make a good point. I mean, it's one of those things, that sometimes, especially in I feel like it happens a lot in the NFL where they'll get a guy to push their main starter, to push them to be, hey, look, we got a guy. I'm not saying we're gonna take you out, we're gonna put you in, we're gonna like put you as a backup or anything like that. But this just goes to show that we're not gonna wait for you forever, right? Like, do it now, do it ASAP, like make the move. And you're right. This is the year. If they want to do something, this could be the year. And they have the pieces for sure. So it's gonna be another fascinating year in Dallas. As it always, I feel like whether it's negative or positive, they're always in the news. So we'll definitely see, and especially without Ezekiel Elliott, it's Tony Pollard's backfield. So we'll see what he does there. But I think it's a good place to wrap things up for this edition of the Bears Den. I want to thank my co-host Joe Tanksley for joining me on another episode. Of course, like I said before, join us next week as we will have our Bears preview for this upcoming season. I'm sure it'll be a good one. So I want to thank everyone for watching. Of course, follow us at War Media on all social medias, from TikTok to Threads and all that. I am Saul Rodriguez. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.